let's go ahead and get started with our lab at home today. Since we have kind of a few announcements at the very beginning here, we'll just kind of start off with our usual. Oops, am I still in view, Max?
You sure are, Peregrine.
Beautiful, okay. I'll go ahead and pin my video, sorry about that. All right, so we'll start off with kind of our behavior code as usual, then I have a few announcements, and then we will get started. So as always, our learning process is all about respect. Respect for ourselves, for each other, and our world. We ask you all to show respect by using kind language and appropriate words in the chat box, as this is a program for everyone. My friend Max is moderating the chat and can disable the chat function for individual users if that's needed. I don't think it will be. All of that said, it's okay to disagree or to share your feelings. We welcome all ideas that are founded in respect and invite everyone to do the same in this online space. So when we have the lab on site, we encourage learners to lead with their questions and ideas, but that's a little harder to do here in this virtual space. I'm still going to ask you all plenty of questions and hope you will share your ideas and your own questions as much as possible in the chat. So let me go ahead and first tell you about our exciting event starting today. Then we're going to do our building project together, maybe talk about some of our ideas for alternative designs for that building project. And then at the end, my friend Max is going to share some information about a great platform where you can share all of your amazing photos of bugs that you find using some of the stuff that we're going to be building today, while also contributing to ongoing environmental research. So let's go ahead and start with that announcement. Today, we are kicking off our special summer bug out celebration. That's our first ever virtual event dedicated to exploring the world of bugs and getting to know your invertebrate neighbors. So that means for the next 4 weeks, we're gonna have bug-centric labs at home to get you ready for your own backyard bug safari. Throughout this event, our friend, local entomologist and author, Dr. Eleanor Spicer Rice, who we talked with last time, we had a cool Q&A with her. She's going to share some expert tips for exploring the wild world around us in her 1-minute bug hunt videos on our YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and have Max link that there, perfect, in the chat, so you can go check those out after the lab at home. They're really cool. All right, so finally, the bug out event includes kind of a cool challenge aspect. We think that insect appreciation is an art as well as a science. So we will be posting special bug out creative challenges on Facebook every Wednesday during this event. Your entry will put you into a drawing to win fabulous prizes each week. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys the theme so you can start thinking about it. This week's bug out challenge is to write a haiku about your bug hunting experience or about a specific bug that you have found. So you write that haiku, you put it on Facebook, and that will enter you into a drawing, and I hope that I can select one of you guys to win some of our awesome prize packs. I wanna ask you guys really quick, do we know what a haiku is? Is there anybody in the chat who could tell me what is a haiku? We can even write that out. Just really quick here. A haiku is a type of poem. Yeah, exactly. A haiku is traditionally a form of Japanese poetry that counts different syllables. So for the number of syllables in each word, right, you want to make sure that the first line has 5 syllables, the second line has 7 syllables, and the last line has 5 syllables. So there's only 3 lines in the poem. It's kind of a challenge to make sure that you're kind of not using too many words because you want it all to fit within that syllable idea. A good way to count syllables is to clap while you're talking. So if I'm gonna say hello, I'm gonna clap each time there's a syllable. So hello. Hello has 2 syllables. How about if I say insect? How many syllables does that have? What do you guys think? 2, yeah, you guys are exactly right. So insect. So the number of times you clap, if I'm gonna say my name, I'm gonna say Peregrine. So 1, 2, 3 syllables. So that's a way to count it. That's just kind of a little aside. Again, we really think that a great way to learn more about nature is to kind of connect with it on multiple levels, including creative levels. So that's why we're asking you to write a poem about kind of your cool experiences. So let's see, all of that said, we are going to get to today's experiment or today's building project. So can I ask you guys if you're going to be doing the project along with us at home? Are any of you guys going to be doing this project? Let's see. Maybe not, maybe some of us. That's great. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. If you just want to kind of watch and see how we do it, and then you can do it on your own afterward. We always send out the curriculum that we use after each program. So it's okay if we're just looking for right now. We can always revisit it later and do some building. Sometimes it's good to see what people do first. So I'm going to go ahead and switch cams here, and I have a special experiment cam today so that you guys can see what my hands are doing a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our experiment cam. So here's our experiment cam. Here's kind of my little working board here. Today, we're making a different device than we made last time, right? Last time, we talked about making a spy pot, this little thing where you can look at an insect up close by placing it in here and then gently kind of pressing it so that it's still, right, on this surface where there is some plastic wrap and underneath there's a little bit of cotton. So it's kind of this safe little chamber where you can look at a bug really well without injuring it and being able to, of course, let it go afterward. So last time we built these, and this is going to kind of complement this. The project we're going to make today is going to be something that helps you catch the bug in the first place. So I want to ask, have you guys ever caught bugs before? Was it easy or hard? What do you think? Yeah, some of us have. Yeah, some of us have, and some of us think it was easy. Maybe sometimes we think it was hard. I know that it depends on the bug, right? A lot of times it's a big enough bug that I can kind of catch it. And other times I'm not sure I want to touch it with my hands. So we're going to be creating something that helps us to capture an insect without touching it with our hands, both for our safety, for the insect's safety, and also lets us release it afterward. We're going to start with just a regular bottle. This is kind of like I think this is a 33 ounce like seltzer bottle. And we're going to be cutting it in half to make the main body of our insect catcher. So what we need to do is kind of cut it in half, and we want it to be fairly even. And what I'm going to do to help my cut be fairly even is I'm putting a rubber band around my bottle, and I'm going to trace a line that goes all the way around, and that way I won't cut too crooked a line. It might not be totally perfect, but that's okay because I can always trim it later. So I'm going to start cutting. My tip for you guys when we're cutting something that doesn't have a defined edge, you know, it's hard to start cutting it like that. But what we're going to do to kind of get your cut started is I would use the thumbtack that I recommended. In our curriculum that we sent out before, I was like, hey, maybe you should get a thumbtack to make some of these parts easier. So what we'll do is just kind of poke a hole, and once you poke enough of a hole, you can kind of get your scissors in there and get started cutting. So I'm going to cut mine pretty quickly here. Mine is a pretty thick plastic bottle. What about you guys? I will definitely be very careful with my scissors, for sure. Cutting around my bottle here. And the size of your top versus the bottom of your bottle is kind of up to you. We do want to make sure that there's kind of plenty of room in here. If you think you're not totally sure what size you want it to be, you can always cut it a little bigger, because you can always cut things smaller. You can always cut it smaller if you want it to be smaller, but it's hard to add it back if you want it to be bigger. So I have almost cut my entire bottle here. Very nice. All right, I have 2 halves of my bottle. Can you guys let me know if you have 2 halves of your bottle? What do you think? Do we have our entire bottle in half? Oh, perfect. So some of us already have our bottle cut out. You can maybe see that mine is not maybe completely straight. So what I can do is I can trim those edges a little bit just to make sure that I have a straighter cut around the edge. And I'm gonna kind of show you why we want it to be straight in a minute. So I have one that I've kind of already prepared with the next step, and I'll show you guys that in just a minute. But what we're gonna do is we are going to use this end of the bottle. So we're gonna be using the kind of the nozzle end of the bottle. And we will be using the cap a little bit later, so we want to keep that around. We want to use the nozzle end of the bottle, and we want this end to be fairly even. And we'll talk about why in just a minute. But now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this circle part. It is a little bit sharp, so let's definitely be very careful with it. We're going to fold this circle into a square shape. So we're going to do it like this. We're going to fold it in half like this. We want to pinch those corners really well. So we're going to fold it in half. And then once we've got this shape, we're going to fold it in half the other direction, like that. So we're pinching our sides really hard there. And now we've got kind of I like to call this a squircle shape. It's a square circle or a circular square. In order to make this kind of a more defined square, what I'm going to do is take those edges I pinched and pinch them down a little further. Again, being very careful of that edge, because sometimes that can be a little pokey. But I'm going to make sure that I have folded down my edges there so I have a nice, crisp square. So I'll show you what this looks like after I have finished it and give you guys a minute to catch up, but it's okay if we're not doing it exactly step by step along with me, because this recording will of course go up on YouTube after the stream, and we will have the curriculum, the directions sent to you guys after as well. So it's okay if you're not doing it exactly with me, but I just want to be able to show you guys. So I've kind of created my round bottle, right? It used to be, here we go, it used to be this round bottle, and I have created this nice square shape. And we're going to talk about why it is a square. It's a square because we're going to be creating this kind of chamber that captures the insect without you having to touch it and without potentially injuring the insect. So we're going to be creating kind of a trap door like this. And it's a little easier to make the door that will cover this area a square than it is to make it a circle. Right? We want to be able to kind of seal the insect in a little bit. Again, it's not going to be, an airtight or watertight seal or anything, just to make sure that the insect can't crawl out under a little space, right? We want to make sure that our door can completely cover the opening here. So I'm going to set this aside. And again, I'll show you, there's this is definitely not a totally perfect cut here. There's definitely some kind of rough edges, and I can always take the time later to shape those up. In fact, I have another one over here that I spent a little bit more time on. It has some tape on it as well because I was testing it. But this is one that I spent some time going back and trimming all the edges to make sure that it was, mostly to make sure that it was safe for me to handle. So let's say that we have got this part of our bug catcher ready. I'll put it aside here. Now we're going to make a door for our bug catcher. We said we wanted to make sure that it can completely enclose the insect in there. So we want to make sure that we have a piece of cardboard or even a piece of thick paper, right? We want to make sure that it can kind of stand up on its own, not like that. It doesn't have to stand up like that, but that it's fairly substantial, that it won't fold too easily. But we want to make sure it's just a little bit bigger than the big opening of our bottle here, right? We want to make sure it's a little bit bigger, except for on one side. On one side, we want it to line up, and you can pick the side, doesn't matter. But here, I'll show you like this. Right, you can kind of see that on most of the sides, like this one, it's a little bit bigger, but there's one side where I want it to be the same, and it's going to kind of be this bottom side here. And that's because we're going to create a hinge. So I'm going to put that word in the chat and ask you guys. This is something many of us use every day, but sometimes we don't think about what makes this possible. What is a hinge? What do you think? What does it do? Where do you find one? So a hinge is something that we put, yeah, exactly, Maya, on a door, right? So it helps a door to open. It's something that's kind of at the corner, right, the far end of this door, and helps it to open and close, right? Because otherwise we would have to kind of take all of our doors and move them aside in order to go through them, right? So doors that open like this have a hinge on the side. Perfect, you guys know what a hinge is. We're gonna create a hinge, a trapdoor hinge, for our insect catcher. So the way we're gonna do that is we've got our little square of cardboard that's a little bit bigger than the big opening of our bottle. And I have some tape here. I just have some clear packing tape. You can probably use masking tape as well. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna rip a little bit off here. Sometimes tape can be a little loud. Let's see if this one is. Oh, not too bad. So I have ripped a piece of tape, and I am going to put it on my door here. I'm going to put half of my tape onto the cardboard, and the other half will be attached to the bottle. But this is going to be really important. It's not going to be totally flush like that. I'm going to make sure that there is a little gap. Let's get it under the camera there. A little bit of a gap between the bottom of my bottle and the top of my door. So I'll stick it on there and show you. See how there's a little bit of a space between the top of my door and the bottom of my bottle. And that's so it can move, right? It can move up and down, and this part is sealed up. It's not an empty space that an insect could crawl out of. It's pretty well sealed. So I did tape it on a little tiny bit crooked, so I'm gonna fix that really quickly while you guys fixing yours up. There we go. This whole process is not about having it done perfectly the first time. It's definitely more about just kind of learning as you go. I might even, I'll leave that. So right now we're thinking like, how on earth is this gonna be a bug trapper? Well, we'll show you in just a second. So we've got this cool hinge here. And what we're gonna do is we are going to put a hole in the center of our cardboard. Doesn't have to be the perfect center, but I'm gonna use my thumbtack to poke a nice sized hole. I want my hole to be big enough that my string can fit through it. So here's my tip for getting the thumbtack hole to be a little bit bigger. I kind of put it in there and then I wiggle it around. We want to do this part really carefully because of course there's a little sharp point there. We just want to make sure that we wiggle it around plenty until we have a space that is big enough for our string to pass through. I think that's about big enough for my thread. Once we've done that, we are almost, we are actually more than halfway done. But this step might take a little bit of time. So it's okay if we don't do this one precisely along with me during the stream, but I'll show you guys how I did it. We want to make a hole. We made one in our trap door. Now we want to make it in the top of the bottle. So it takes a little bit of time to take your thumbtack and push it through here, right? To put it flat on the table and to push it through here. This is kind of a thick plastic, so it might take a minute. That is okay. For my purposes, I just wanted to show you how I did it. So I've got one that's already finished. And the reason that I have this cap on it is because this is the chamber where the insect is going to be. If I'm going to be holding this end, I don't want it to be able to crawl out, right? So I'll be able to put my cap on a little bit later. Now, what we will do is we will introduce our string. So we want a nice long string. Remember, you can always cut it shorter, so it's okay to cut it a little bit longer. We want it to be at least as long as our bottle, right? And we also want it to be a little bit longer than our paper towel tube if we're going to use that for our handle. If you don't want to use a handle, you don't have to, but eventually it will go on the end like that. So if you are using one, make sure that you get a longer piece of string. So I've got my nice long piece of yellow string here. And I'm going to cut it. And now it's like I'm making kind of a necklace out of all of my pieces. I'll put that over here. I'm going to make a necklace out of all of my pieces. I'm going to take my string and I'm going to kind of poke it through my hole. We'll see how easy this part is for me. Poke it through my hole. Easier said than done. Maybe my hole needs to be a little bit bigger. My string is also a little bent. All right, I'm going to cut a tiny bit off my string. There's all these good kinds of like tricks and hacks for threading a needle, right? If you're using a needle and thread, for getting that thread in the hole. And I didn't think it would be this difficult to put it into this rather larger hole here. What we're going to do is we want to put it through the bottom. Did I get it? Yay! I finally got it. Okay. So we want to put it through our hole at the bottom. And then we're going to put it all the way through the top of our bottle. Keep it going all the way through. And then we want to put the cap on our bottle. So we want our string to be able to go through the cap so that it comes out the other side. Remember, it's like we're making this a necklace out of all of our pieces. I'm going to use my thumbtack to help me get that in there, see if that will help. Oops. Almost got it. So what this is telling me is that this is good data. This is telling me that maybe a bigger piece of string would be helpful for making this because it wouldn't be so hard for me to put it through the hole and grab it. Oops, says that I froze. Am I back? Am I all here, my friends?
You're good on my end, Peregrine.
Perfect. All right. So now we've got this interesting looking necklace out of all of our pieces. It went all the way through our trap door, it went all the way through our chamber, and now it went through our cap. I'm going to go ahead and put my cap on the bottle. And if you want this, and then there's one last step that we're going to do. We've got our beautiful sort of mechanism here. Our last step is to kind of prevent our string from falling out of the hole here. So I have a paper clip. And what I'm going to do is tie my string around my paper clip. And I'll show you how I'm doing that. So I want it to go all the way on here. And when I tie that on, what that will do is kind of keep the string anchored. It means that I won't be able to pull it through. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that on. Again, I'm learning that this yellow thread is a little small. Here we go. We've got, I'm going to tie in a little bow. But yours doesn't have to be a bow. We've got our paper clip in. This is kind of our anchor, so that when we pull the string on this side, it will not pull the string through the trap door. So what I'm going to do to help kind of secure it is I'm going to take a little bit of tape and tape it on. You know, come to think of it, we could just tape it on to start with. We don't have to have the paper clip, but I thought it might be helpful to help weigh it down. So what I'm doing is I am taping this to the very bottom so that it will not get pulled through. So now, if you want this to be your insect catcher, you are all the way done. What you have now is this mechanism that will pull your door shut, right? You start with an open door, and then you can pull it shut when you pull the string on the other end. If you, however, don't want to get as close to an insect as this, let's say there's one right here and you want to catch it like that, right? You might want to use a handle. So I used a paper towel tube, and I can just tape this really well onto my handle. as long as, whoops, as long as my string comes all the way on the inside from the other side of this handle, I will still be able to use my bug trapper. So this will work if we can lure a bug inside of here. This can also work if we have, let's say that this is a wall, right? We have an insect that's on a wall. You can sort of get it to walk on top of your trapdoor, and then you can pull your trapdoor shut. And you have got a trapped but safe insect. So that's kind of the main idea there, to get our insect without harming it, without potentially putting us in any danger of having to touch an insect that maybe we don't know what kind it is yet. I'm going to put my camera back to me, and I'm going to hand it over really quickly to Max, who's going to tell us a little bit about a really cool platform for when you capture some amazing insects using your device and you want to take cool pictures with them and share them with people and even contribute to ongoing research. Go ahead, Max.
Thank you, Peregrine. That was really awesome. I am really looking forward to using mine to safely trap some bugs, because I often have a pretty hard time with figuring out how to approach them and then how to keep them in an area for long enough to look at some of the really beautiful detail. Because that's part of what's really cool about looking at bugs, is that you really can't tell too much about them until you get really, really close to them, until you can spend some time with them. So what a great way to be able to spend a little bit of time with them and then release them safely later on. So like Peregrine mentioned all the way at the beginning, this week is our very first week of sending y'all a challenge. Dr. Eleanor, who joined us last week, made us about a 1-minute video that I linked up earlier in the chat, but that we'll link again, about how to look for spiders by looking for a really interesting piece of evidence that they have been around before. Now, I love looking for spiders. I would say it's probably likely that a lot of y'all also looking for spiders, but over the next 4 weeks, we're going to tell you how to find a few different types of creepy, crawly little things, both inside and outside of your house. And this is not only important because it's good to always be practicing your science process skills, right, of observation and of tracking and of looking for things. And it's not also just good because you get to learn more about these bugs themselves. It's also really good for science. And what I'm about to show you is a great interface, a great way that we can use our observations, take some pictures of them, and then share those out with scientists so that all of us have a better idea of what's going on around us. And that interface is called iNaturalist. And I've just shared that here, and we'll also link to that in the chat in just a second. Now, this is an iNaturalist project that we ran a few months ago called the Durham-wide BioBlitz. And that was with a few of our partners, where we were just kind of looking for any types of any life that you could find here in Durham. And we found a whole bunch. Let me scroll down and show you what some things people saw were. There was this kind of unusual looking worm thing there, but somebody also saw an eastern tiger swallowtail. Somebody found a robin's egg. And by looking at all of these pictures together, people over the course of just 2 weeks made over 3,000 observations, which helps us so much understand what kinds of life we can find here in Durham over the course of a 2-week period. Now, in this project, we were letting people look at birds, look at plants, look at fungus, but in our new project attached to this one, we are just looking for bugs, and you can see that project here. Now, the way to use iNaturalist, and especially to use ours, is really, really, really simple. You can either use it here on your computer, your iPad, your laptop, whatever, or you can download an app onto your phone. And basically what you do is you go outside, you can use your spy pot or your insect trapper that Peregrine just showed us how to use, and take a picture of what you see. And if that's all you feel like doing, then that is okay. You can just take a picture and then put it here onto our project site. If you think you have an idea of what you're looking at, you can put that in there too. There's a way that you can use it to describe a little bit of what you see. But one amazing piece of iNaturalist is the incredible scientific community that is using it, that you are a part of. So you get to upload something, but somebody else who is using this, who may be a scientific expert in bugs, which I'm remembering now, there is a special scientific word for somebody who studies bugs. Does anybody remember what that word is? Can somebody tell me in the chat what the special name we have for somebody who studies bugs is? I am just totally forgetting. Oh my goodness, of course, it's an entomologist. Excellent, very cool. There are lots and lots of entomologists who use iNaturalist also, who would love to see what you submit on there. So if you upload a picture and you're not sure what it is, that might be seen by an entomologist who can tell you and the rest of us what it is that you're looking at, down all the way to the specific species that you are looking at. So we hope that you will join us in submitting your pictures here also, because it's not only just for fun, it's also for helping us to better understand what types of bug life, and that's bugs in the very general sense, so that includes, of course, true bugs, but also spiders and worms and other small things that don't have backbones. You can submit all of that here and not only learn more about them yourself, but also help us, help science, help society learn more about bugs too. And I think that that's a really, really cool opportunity. Okay, I'm going to stop my share here. I'm going to hand it back over to Peregrine to wrap up. And while they are doing that, I'm also going to share the links to these projects in the chat here.
That's great, Max. Thank you so much for telling us about that. I hope that I can see some of your guys' amazing photos on that platform. I know that I'm going to be putting some of mine up there. That about wraps it up for us today. I want to thank you guys all for being here. Remember, if you want to share specifically your experiment, right, if you made it along with us today or if you make it later, you can share any of your other questions or ideas with us on social media if you tag the museum and tag #LabAtHome. We would love to see what you guys have or what you have made. So next week, we will continue our summer bug out celebration with some experiments to study the preferences of pill bugs, the kind of environments that pill bugs like. And I will be capturing some pill bugs to have for you guys, and we're going to be using a special camera that will allow us to see them up close. It's going to be really cool. That's next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. I hope that we can see you all there. As always, we will send the curriculum for this week's Lab at Home via email by the end of the day today, and you can also watch the recording of our live stream on the museum's YouTube channel later in the week. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will join us again next week. Once again, that's every Wednesday at 2 p.m. You can register on our Life and Science at Home page, which we'll have Max put in the chat. And we can also get that link by email through member tips or by subscribing to the Life and Science at Home page. So that's a whole lot at the very end there. Thank you guys so much for experimenting with me today. I'm really interested to see if you end up doing any modifications to yours, if you end up doing a handle, if you find some way to seal this a little bit better. I was thinking about maybe putting some Play-Doh on the edge. I'm not totally sure, that might make it too heavy. But that's basically what the scientific process is trying out an idea. If it doesn't work, maybe trying something else. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for all of your time today. We went over by a few minutes, but that is all the time we have. So I will hopefully talk to you all next Wednesday. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye, y'all. Good to see you.
See you later.